Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Greetings and welcome, dear viewers, to ReBridges, a potential television series that aims at connecting and interacting with the intelligentsia and the academia of the Muslim world. To connect with this pool of knowledge and wisdom, we talk to some outstanding men and women from around the Muslim world on real matters, matters that face the 1.97 billion Muslims of the world today, and which need to be discussed and dissected for their pragmatic diagnoses and solutions. I am your host from Pakistan, Rizwan Mumtaz Ali. Viewers, before we touch upon the many Muslim matters that are there to be discussed, it is important to first understand what we can call the Muslim brain. We need to understand the Muslim intellect, the present day Muslim intellect, and the Muslim intellect of the golden period of Islam. We need to understand how we as Muslims, despite our differences, orient our actions, reactions, and tendencies according to our belief, and how do we think and behave individually as well as in groups. Therefore, our today's topic is to do with psychology. In fact, with Islamic psychology. As we know, psychology is the scientific study of mind and behavior. It includes the study of conscious and unconscious phenomena, including feelings and thoughts. As social scientists, psychologists aim to understand the behavior of individuals and groups, perception, cognition, emotion, attention, and personality are key words in psychology. However, a distinguishing feature between Islamic psychology and Western psychology is that Islam recognizes a spiritual center within the human being, which is the soul. The soul searches for the source. It has come from the source and will go back to the source, rejoin the source. In the light of the Quran, this journey of the human soul was best explained and followed by the Muslim mystics, the Sufiya. Immersed in the love of God and His last and most beloved messenger, Hazrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Muslim Sufiya touched the human spirit to purify it and to heal it. It was their understanding of ilmul nafs, the science of self, which gave them the light to search the soul. As a result, they spread love, devotion, tolerance, forbearance, benevolence, and a certain pride. They healed, they mended, they purified the human spirit. Western psychology, on the other hand, denies this spiritual center, with the exception of Carl Jung and some other Western psychologists. However, of late, the West has begun work on the discipline of transpersonal psychology or spiritual psychology, which has evolved out of humanism. The fundamental concepts in transpersonal psychology include connection to a larger sense of existence, recognition of what is sacred, and a drive to find a greater sense of being. To what the West is now turning to, Islam has much before the West given mankind the route to connect with the Creator for our salvation. And for this, Islam greatly values the importance of good mental health and emotional well-being. The Quran provides guidance to attain good mental health and live a meaningful quality of life. To better understand transpersonal psychology and Islamic psychology and their role in the attainment of good mental health and emotional well-being, we have with us today as our guest an eminent transpersonal psychologist and academician, Dr. Saliha Uysal. Dr. Saliha Uysal is a member of Theology Faculty, Psychology of Religion, Department at the University of Istanbul, Turkiye. Her master's degree was on transpersonal psychology and religion, and her PhD was based on psychology of religion. She's authored books on near-death experiences and Islamic psychology. Dr. Saliha, welcome to ReBridges. My first question to you: how do you define transpersonal psychology, and what is the difference between the Western concept of psychology and Islamic psychology, or ilmun nafs, the science of self? Please also shed some light on the history and theory of Islamic psychology.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rizwan Mumtaz Ali. I'd like to express my gratitude to you for inviting me in the beginning. And transpersonal psychology, transpersonal approach, it literally means extending or going beyond the personal or individual. It's something beyond self. It is concerned with the realm that includes human experiences beyond the ego. So, as all we know, transpersonal psychology is a school of modern psychology, of course. It integrates the spiritual and transcendent aspects of the human experience. We can say it's a kind of development beyond personal levels. Of course, it changes according to the different approaches, understandings of different geographies. But within the frame of modern psychology, we can say that it includes spiritual self-development, self beyond the ego, peak experiences, like Abraham Maslow produced the term, mystical experiences, spiritual crisis, spiritual evolution, religious conversion, like ihtida, altered states of consciousness, spiritual practices, and some other sublime and unusually expanded experiences of living. When we talk about the word transpersonal, it encompasses genetic, racial, collective, and phylogenetic memories, and also karmic experiences, and also some archetypal dynamics like Stanislav Grof mentions in his brilliant works. This discipline, transpersonal psychology field, attempts to describe and integrate spiritual experience within modern psychological theory, and it also attempts to formulate new theory to encompass such experiences. Of course, these experiences like psychological study of religion, parapsychology, psychedelic movements, or the interests in Eastern spiritual systems and practices shaped the field of transpersonal psychology. We can see that from the long and short-term works. The concept of transpersonal was first introduced as a psychological idea, of course, about a century ago. And it was first used by William James in 1905. Of course, the meaning was different from today's usage. It was used in the context of James' radical empiricism. It was totally different, today it has something, it has a different meaning. And that time, after William James, of course, names like Carl Jung, Abraham Maslow, Stanislav Grof, we can say that they are the most important figures who have set the stage for transpersonal studies. Especially Abraham Maslow was an important figure, in the establishment of transpersonal psychology. He had an important work on human peak experiences. He presented the outline of a fourth force psychology. After him, it was called, after his naming, it was called as fourth force psychology. he also named transhumanistic psychology. It was in one of his lectures in 1967, because he wanted to separate it from humanistic psychology. You know, he established humanistic psychology before and announced transpersonal psychology as a fourth force within the frame of modern psychology. Of course, he was not the only person who used the word transpersonal or transpersonal psychology. Also, we can credit the word transpersonal to two important figures more, like Stanislav Grof, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, and Anthony Suttich. Maslow and them, they were in good dialogue for the new field. Also, we see from Robin Power's works, especially the paper entitled Counseling and Spirituality, a Historical Review, the term transpersonal starts to show up in academic works from 1970s. So we can say that the founders of transpersonal psychology were Robert Fragger, which we call Raghib Baba. In Sufi world, he is called Raghib Baba, James Fadiman, Stanislav Grof, Stanley Krippner, Charles Tart, and names like Francis Walken and Roger Walsh. Of course, there are many other names like Ken Wilber and so many important names, but because time is limited, we can mention these names for now. So they contributed a lot to the field, especially between 1960s and 1970s. Among them, there were physicians, psychotherapists. Also, we should mention that Charles Tart was an important name. He brought a different interest for transpersonal psychology, especially with the topic of altered states of consciousness. That was a very important contribution. Later in 1969, in historical background, we see an important journal, a leading journal, which is called Journal of Transpersonal Psychology, was published. Another important development in the field in 1972, the Association for Transpersonal Psychology was established after the journal, 2-3 years later. Then the International Transpersonal Psychology Association was founded by Stanislav Grof. And after him, in 1975, Robert Fragger, Raghib Baba, and James Fadiman founded the Institute of Transpersonal Psychology. Later, we see that many other institutions were founded, like Saybrook Graduate School, the California Institute of Asian Studies. But much later, we will see that their names were changed, like Sofia University. I mean, the names included transpersonal word. They started to change. It's due to some changes and departures of important names from the field, and changing the name to integral instead of transpersonal. So they tried, some groups, especially from humanistic approach, they tried to establish transpersonal psychology as a separate division within the framework of the American Psychological Association. But unfortunately, it failed, although they tried for a few times, it failed. And it continued to promote transpersonal issues in collaboration with Division 32 in APA, American Psychological Association. Of course, with the reformed name, Transpersonal Psychology Interest Group. And in 1990s, we see new names and new contributions to the field, especially with transpersonal psychotherapy, names like David Lukoff, Brent Cortright, Stuart Sawatsky. they wanted to propose a new diagnostic category called psycho-religious or psycho-spiritual problem to be included in the DSM book of APA. And after a change on its name as religious or spiritual problem, it was approved in DSM in 1993. And in the middle of 1990s, an important name, Ken Wilber, departed from the field, and he established Integral Institute in 1998. And in 1996, there was another important development. The British Psychological Society established a transpersonal psychology section. Though some departures, important names departures like Ken Wilber, we can remark that transpersonal field had grown rapidly. And in 2000, things started to change with new projects which were revisioning the theory, and the Journal of Transpersonal Psychology and the International Journal of Transpersonal Studies were accepted for new indexes. But Nicole Rizek declared that APA have not yet recognized transpersonal psychology as an approved area of study. Maybe which was a bit negative development for the field. And with such things, departures and such declarations, some institutions announced their name or announced that they changed their name. And this brought a new perspective to the field. We can speak about transpersonal psychology's history and background like this.
Some think that Islamic psychology is just about Sufism, mysticism, and some consider it to be about tazkiyah-e-nafs, purification of the soul. Some call it the Islamization of psychotherapy, the concepts of fitra, self, qalb, ruh. Is Islamic psychology about Islamic interventions for psychotherapy, or is it a scientific discipline in which solutions can be found of psychological problems faced by all, including the non-Muslims? And how can we equate Islamic psychology with the Western concept of psychology?
Thank you very much for this question as well. We can say that transpersonal psychology is a tool, or was a tool, which brought science and religion closer to each other. But transpersonal psychology is not a representative of religion. Scientific approach cannot be considered to replace a religious approach. But of course, it has got connection. It has got a powerful connection with religion, we can say. Because transpersonal psychology is not just a field about the sick people or pathological person. It is a psychology of the healthy person and his existing potentials. Our personal history and our personality trait arising from personal history, these are all only a shell, it's only a shell. And there is a very high potential for existence beyond this shell, which means we have something beyond we see, like hakikat of eşya, reality of stuff, or reality of the objects. So within the framework of transpersonal psychology, not only contemporary personality, but also extreme experiences, inspirations, creativity, altruism are investigated in transpersonal psychology fields. Because this field, within the framework of modern psychology, of course, I'm talking for the introduction related to it, it believes in the continuity of human development, and it argues that this continuity of development continues not only in human relations, but also in the human-creator relationship. Transpersonal psychology argues that one of the basic needs of human beings to exist is to use their own potential and creativity. For example, I remember this from 2005. Robert Frogger mentioned about it as a very good example. A bird is a bird as long as it flies, but without wings, he cannot fly and he becomes sick. Like this bird, for the human being, it's the same. As long as a person doesn't use his capacity and creativity, I mean, his potential, he is also actually sick. Because inside everyone, there is a power, there is a jawhar waiting to be discovered. So for this reason, or for this, a person should first believe in something stronger than himself. Whether it is called God, Allah, or something else for someone else, when we look at the transpersonal psychology philosophy, I mean, but we will connect it later maybe to Sufism. Because there are unexplained mystical powers, like Robert Frogger, American Sufi Sheikh, says, for example, what is the soul? What is ruh? Why was it made? What for? No one knows for sure, of course. Like in the ayat, Surah Isra, verse 85, وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الرُّوحِ قُلِ الرُّوحَ مِنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّي. They ask you, oh Muhammad, they ask you about the soul. Say the soul is of the affair of my Lord. And only Allah knows, only Allah has the knowledge of it, and we have maybe only a little of it from it. We cannot know what is soul. And as Michael Washburn puts it, transpersonal psychology is a comprehensive undertaking. It's a human science, which itself organizes the various human disciplines without being strictly within the scope of any of them, any of disciplines, I mean. And transpersonal psychology argues that there is a higher side, supreme side of every human being than the one that is generally known and reflected in our daily life, in actual life. And inspiration arising from this sublime part always directs people towards more perfection, or more perfect, maybe let's say, creator. With the influence of the ultimate state side of the human being, a position of growth-centered attitude and self-actualization is shifted. Because we have been created not to stop and stay. We have been created to discover why we are here on earth, and to grow spiritually, and to reach the top point of our journey, like Seyr-i Suluk in Islamic Sufism. So it's a process that has more content than the individual human. I mean, beyond the individuality, beyond the development process of the individual human being. And in this journey, in the journey that we mentioned towards perfection, each individual can be on a path of his own choice and is free to change the path. So it's our own journey. Like we are alone as a human being on earth. We seem to be alone, but we are not. We were alone when we were a baby. We will be alone when we pass away. But like it was said, "La tahzan inna Allaha ma'ana." Don't be sad. Allah is with us, and we will make our path according to this choice, and we will be free to change. We are free to change our path. So we have irada, we have freedom. And transpersonal experiences, by definition, transcend sense of identity and self-concept, and include broader aspects of humanity like life, hayat, soul, ruh, universe like kainat, and even beyond the universe, more than beyond the universe. And this field, the field of psychology, the transpersonal psychology, is intrapersonal rather than interpersonal. And transpersonal psychology sought to expand the field of psychological research to include human behavior and experiences in relation to optimal health and well-being. And how does it be succeeded? How can it happen? So in this respect, it aims to integrate the knowledge of both traditions towards the realization of human potentials by appealing to both esoteric science and Eastern wisdom. For the Western world now I'm talking of course. In other words, it aims to explain the zaviyas or the faces, sides that Western psychology cannot explain, cannot solve with the mystical tendencies of the East by combining the rational and the intuitive, we can say, if we think dualistically. So we should mention also the point that there are many psychological schools have influenced the field, like analytical psychology of Jung, humanistic psychology of Abraham Maslow. Why I speak about this connection? Because there is a powerful connection between the transpersonal and the humanistic approaches to psychology. And humanistic psychology is very important, especially for Muslims, because it seems like it is a kind of approach that shows the human something needs to be loved. I mean, as you know, in the West, the 15th century is regarded as the starting of humanism, and the word humanism was derived from the word human. At first glance, in the very beginning, it is thought that humanism is a movement that values people, glorifies people, and human love, as if it approaches human with mercy, respect, and love. But when we look at it deeply, we understand that true equivalent of humanism is anthropocentrism. It is to use the human mind, not revelation, to understand life and the world, to make value judgments, and to establish laws and standards. I mean, it entails recognizing the created human being as the basis of human values rather than the creator, which means it was just a nicer word for atheism. So this, maybe in another platform, we can talk about humanism, transhumanism, posthumanism, but these are all projects to change the place of the creator and the created human being. And it is wished, it is desired to make the created human being to sit in the place of God. These are the projects for such things. And if I go back to the relation between transpersonal psychology and religion, as you asked, combining, we should remember that in all folks, in all geographies, we see two clear fields: the field of science and the field of spirituality, or you can say magic for some folks, some other folks, or religion for some other folks. Religion is the origin of ethics and moral philosophy. From time of Adam, peace be upon him, alayhi salam, and throughout human history, every community have received guidance from Allah. But science and religion, they were always like resentful and reconciled brothers. For some time they have been resentful, and for some time they have been reconciled brothers, you know. When we consider the historical background, psychology, despite its philosophical heritage, has created different boundaries by keeping itself apart from a science that includes belief. I mean, in the process of dissociation, contemporary psychology of that time or our time, has rewritten its own history, denying its past based on belief from the philosophical tradition. Many psychologists did not or could not, even Muslim psychologists and psychiatrists, considered that psychology could deal with religion. They couldn't think like that. They couldn't think that psychology could deal with belief. And however, of course, human qualities such as religion and belief cannot be ignored. We already know that. We already see that even in Western world, because human being is created with that fitra, with that nature. They have characteristics that cover the whole personality as important as spiritual parts of the human being. Because when we remember Carl Gustav Jung's words, religion is an extremely important psychological side or aspect. The purpose and meaning of this psychological aspect is hidden in the path that leads to freedom. According to Jung, that is same for all religions. I mean, Christianity, Judaism, Buddhism, and Islam. Unfortunately, many psychologists throughout the history have taken an attitude of believing that religion in general has few compensatory qualities. For example, Skinner, a very important name in modern psychology, believed that religion was the result of fully reinforced behavior and a mechanism of external control over the individual. Sigmund Freud, on the other hand, argued that religion consisted of the fulfillment of infantile desires. Can you imagine? And he saw religion as a neurosis, or he saw praying, he saw fasting as an obsessive compulsive disorder. He was influenced by Darwin, especially in the 18th century, and in the early 19th century, many people were influenced by Darwin, as you know. And we can say that Freud dealt a great blow to religion. In quotation, the victory over religion was won by Freud in psychology world. After the Darwinian process, which removed man from being an ashrafi makhluk, the most honored of all creation, the doctrine of the Freudian period, which reduced God from his creative position to a creature of the human mind, became dominant. The source of religious thought is not various complexes, as Freud suggested. According to him, it's not my thinking, it's not my thought. The main source of religion is the innate mind of man. Allah has created many proofs of this great blessing that indicate his own existence apart from intelligence. With these evidences, man must find his creator and reveal the ability in his creation. But Freud ignored these superior features in human beings, interpreted humans in a mechanical way, and he created a soulless psychology. Can you imagine? Psychology is something to analyze your soul, but it became a discipline without soul, a soulless discipline. And religion is not an illusion like Freud said, as Freud thought. It's a supreme human, an ashrafi makhluk quality. Despite the pessimistic of understanding of religion from traditional psychology, there are, of course, exceptional thoughts. For example, humanistic psychologists such as Frankl and Maslow, they try to value, at least they seem to value religion. They have drawn attention to how religion is compatible with human nature. And Viktor Frankl, deals with religion in the framework of human self-transcendence, while Maslow emphasized the self-actualization, the hierarchy of needs. He emphasized the self-actualization of human beings, and he argued that self-actualized people and religious people exhibit similar aspects in terms of revealing superior values. According to him, religion is in human nature and doesn't have a supernatural meaning. But there are some other names like William James. For example, he said that religion is a part of our life. It has an important function. So he said something good, that he is giving attention to religion because he was the father of psychology of religion. And he said that religion has got an important function and nothing can replace it. Jung also pointed out that religion is a basic function of the human psyche, and it offers a course that ensures integrity. So on the relationship between religion and psychology, we can say that, while explaining the delicate balance between psychology and religion, like Jung pointed to the formation of an extraordinarily intense unconscious activity with the decline of the Christian worldview, of course, and the unconscious activity coincided with the emergence of the French schools of psychopathology, hypnosis, which formed the basis of psychoanalysis and analytical psychology. We saw that step by step, people need something spiritual, something also religious. Of course, they were afraid of, they were anxious of using the word religion or religious. Instead, they used spirituality, the term of spirituality. Of course, there are different concepts, terms. But let us say that Carl Gustav Jung argued that the expression of unconscious activity activates the creative elements in individual symbolism, thus increasing neurosis. As religion declined, the need for transcendence grew. The human being, too, was using all his power, including the unconscious, the iceberg of Freud and Jung, for consciousness and unconscious, to overcome this tension. At the time, the scientific empirical approach was the best approach to reducing this type of neurotic pain tension. But this approach was insufficient for the depths of the human soul. The human needed something more because he has something beyond his ego. While analyzing the lower and middle unconscious, the upper unconscious was neglected in modern psychology. So contrary to increasing quality of life, mental problems were increasing day by day. Even today in most postmodern world, we see that it is increasing day by day. And recently, positive steps have been taken in this regard, especially with humanistic and psychosynthesis and transpersonal psychology. And we see different branches of it, different approaches of it in different countries. Like even in Turkey, there is an association called Transpersonal Psychology, in Turkish Benetesi Psikoloji, and Professor Mustafa Merter is the leader. He is a psychiatrist. And people often perceive religion as a memory or something old. Even today, most of us, we perceive religion as a memory or something old from old times, but it should be remembered that thoughts become old, but true religion is always fresh. And it is always fresh for everyone who breathes. Today, while many psychologists still don't want anything of a religious nature, recent developments show that there is an increasing interest in religion. The phenomenon of religion takes place in almost all of the social theories of the last century. And some of them continue with a reality and attractiveness that shakes the foundational theory. If we consider the beginning or starting point in this field, the fact that the distance between psychology and religion should be removed has encouraged prudent scientists to search for a more enlightened field. The existence of research journals based on religious issues, like the Journal for the Scientific Study of Religion, Review of Religious Research, the International Journal of the Psychology of Religion. Such studies in the West is one of the best indicators of APS interest in the psychology of religion research. So at this point, as another proof, the increasing influence of transpersonal psychology, which is a school of thought that aims and focuses on the spiritual happiness of individuals, can be shown as a proof, as I said. Aiming at human happiness, there is an opinion that if he can reach the depth within the individual, I mean transpersonal psychology, if it can reach the depth within the individual, it can also go down to the depth inside someone else. Transpersonal psychology advocates the transpersonal, as I said in the beginning, beyond self. I mean, more than we think we are. It points beyond the exists. Just like transpersonal psychology, religions argue that we can be more than we are, but they are often more specific and each has its own system and definition, of course. When considering the perspective of transpersonal psychology on religion, or the way religion is handled in transpersonal psychology, three distinctions should be taken into account. Transpersonal psychology, religion, and spirituality. These three important components should be taken into account. Basically, spirituality refers to actual experiences and the effects of these experiences on people's lives. And these influences convince people of a reality that is higher and different from the material realm, offering a deeper meaning and reason for living. Spirituality is in contrast to the dominant belief system, philosophy of materialism, which argues that nothing exists except matter and its movements and changes, denies the soul and accepts it as an illusion or hallucination, like we mentioned before. So, as last point about your question, I remember when we met Robert Fragger in Istanbul in 2005, I think, he was saying that he was concerned about religion compared to most transpersonal psychologists because they argued that everything is actually in front of us. He argued that everything is in front of us and everything is also beyond us. I mean, the spirituality is based on personal experiences. And this is much clearer in Sufism, he says, because religion is the zahir, outward, external, but tasawwuf, Sufism is batin. Outward is a hollow shell. If it remains away from the inward, I mean, when inward is away from outward, it is usually filled with nafs and cannot have a real structure. External level form pertains to things like rituals, ceremonies, but the inner level is related to knowing the Creator and being one with Him.
The soul searches for the source. Dr. Saliha, Islam emphasizes the transcendence of the soul as a means to connect with the Creator, the source, Allah. The great Muslim minds like Avicenna, Al-Farabi, Ibn Battuta, they were all men of God. The great scientists, Muslim scientists, they were all men of God. Their connection with the Creator actually enabled them to unravel many a scientific mystery. How? How did they utilize their intellectual and thinking capacities to bring about such a great scientific revolution in the world?
What I can say about them, that they based their personal interpretations of religious notions on the ground of the Quran and the Sunnah. Also, they followed a general treatment methodology, kind of psycho-spiritual training. They had Islamic spiritual tradition. They gave importance to the development of resiliency by means of psycho-spiritual training, tarbiyah. And tarbiyah was traditionally conducted by spiritual mentors like shuyukh, sheikhs, or murabbis. They had psycho-spiritual training under the spiritual mentorship of their own sheikhs. This lengthy but often informal mentorship process resulted in their acquisition of spiritual coping mechanisms, and that allowed them, this tarbiyah methods, all these shuyukhs and murabbis, they allowed them to effectively manage the various stresses of daily life. They showed effort to pursue a lifestyle that is harmonious with the essence of religion. They tried to be a great moral character. They purified their heart and soul, of course. They had sincerity, ikhlas, and istiqamah. They stood upright on the straight path. They followed the path of rida and submission, taslimiyah, So Islam keeps the door of spiritual advancement open for believers like them, like Imam al-Ghazali, like Ibn Sirin, Abu Zayd al-Balkhi, and many other important names like them. Always they try to be in front of the spiritual advancement door of Islam through zuhd, taqwa, and ihsan, of course. They always remembered their Lord in their heart with dhikr. They turned a spiritual journey. They turned their heart to Allah also, the Almighty. And they had ihsan, which is a spiritual reality, which represented a spiritual miraj to their Lord. They had a steady psychological condition, and they became conscious of the closeness of the Lord at all times. So they had a deep connection, a powerful rabata, a powerful connection with the Almighty. They were real servants of Allah. They were good men of Allah, like Ahmed al-Faruqi al-Sirhindi, Shah Waliullah al-Dahlawi, or Ibn Ata'Allah al-Iskandari, Ibn Miskawayhi, al-Ghazali, al-Suhrawardi. These were very important names, especially for the Islamic psychology field. Abu Bakr Razi, Ibn Miskawayh, Abu Ali al-Hussein ibn Sina, Abu al-Walid bin Rushd, and later again al-Ghazali, Abu Hamid al-Ghazali. They all contributed a lot to the diversity of Islamic intellectual field or discourse in addressing the physical, the metaphysical, ghaibi, and rational, aqli branches of knowledge. So we have a very rich intellectual history, which was formed by them, and which formed the golden age of Islam, like we can see in the works of Haris al-Muhasibi, Kindi, Farabi, Ibn Sina, Avicenna, Abu Bakr Razi, al-Shirazi, Ibn al-Jawzi, Abu Zayd al-Balkhi, Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawziyya. These people were wonderful people for us. For example, when you look at that period, golden age period, we see an explosion of literature on human behavior, character reformation, like Tathib al-Akhlaq, spiritual medicine, Tibb al-Ruhani, like the work of Razi or like the work of Avicenna, and prophetic medicine, Tibb al-Nabawi, with varying ontologies. And also I should mention the book of Abu Zayd al-Balkhi, Sustenance of the Soul. It was a wonderful contribution in 9th century. And also his manuscript, on the sustenance of body, was an important contribution to Islamic psychology field. And our professor Malik Bedri, rahimahullah, he was also telling us always that he really liked Abu Zayd al-Balkhi's style and his work, which was an important or brilliant contribution to Islamic psychology world. And also, within the broad spectrum of the sacred Islamic sciences, we see three foundational Islamic sciences necessarily inform elements of mental health practice, which are scholastic theology, kalam, and creed, akidah, law, fiqh or ahkam, we can say, and spirituality, I mean, tasawwuf or akhlaq or adab. So these, all of them, these fields address that fundamental issues of Islamic belief, epistemology, metaphysics, philosophy. I mean, because of its foundational position in the sciences, is referred to by some early scholars like Imam Abu Hanifa, Numan bin Thabit. So they all contributed brilliantly. But of course, we should mention here that all of the important points, starting point from all, I mean, the origin of psychology from an Islamic perspective is undoubtedly Al-Quran Al-Kareem and the Hadith, as they are also the origin of Islamic social sciences and knowledge at large. So we have a very important Turath, heritage. We should teach our new generation about this wonderful heritage and make them connected always with our great Muslim scholars, Muslim minds like Avicenna, Al-Farabi, Al-Battani, Ibn Battuta, the man of God. And we should educate our children how to be connected powerfully with the Creator. Maybe we should create our own curricula.
Dr. Saliha, what are the major psychological challenges that the Muslim world today confronts with? And more importantly, how can Islamic psychology help the Muslim youth overcome these challenges? How can Islamic psychology address these issues?
Yes, this is a very important question, I should mention. First, we have the problem of unity in the Muslim world, unfortunately. With a very basic sentence, I should answer, Muslims should be united. This is our first problem, the biggest problem. Considering that the masses are governed by psychological force, we should be united and produce our own psychological power. If we remember that Anna Freud governed big masses with a psychological approach after Sigmund Freud's passing away, we can see that big masses are governed by psychological forces. So we should be united and we should produce our own systems. There are many concepts, remarks, experimental findings that are useful in many schools of psychology. However, we cannot at times accept all out theories without compromising our own Islamic postulates. Second problem, it will be more something social, I mean, psychotropic drugs problem. They are almost universal, but drugs are only part of the solutions, and they have serious side effects at times. And unfortunately, we see this problem among Muslim teenagers as well. I find Islamic cognitive behavior techniques, ICBT models, very appealing for them. Such models can and shall be improved by future research and publications and researchers. There is plenty of unpublished researches about them in the area due to lack of some resources, you know. And also we have got financial problems. So in order to improve Muslim societies and also Islamic psychology fields, finance is needed from sponsors. I think all government agencies find such research necessary for their human development programs and social programs. It is needed. We are in a time where there are efforts to displace religion in general and in particular Islam. I mean, they want to displace Islam through projects such as posthumanism, as I mentioned before. And there are efforts for the removal of young people from their values and their homes, their families, with the promise of unlimited freedom, especially in front of internet, in front of computers. Our next generations or young people are being served an unlimited freedom with the poison of internet. A gradual psychological approach is applied in order to adapt LGBTQ issue to the masses. This is another problem. The flow has been changed step by step in DSM books I mean, LGBT was among the disease list, but then it was removed from the list of diseases. So step by step, from time to time, day by day, they made it out of list of diseases. And another important issue, family is under danger. I mean, matter of family is under danger. And female motive, motive of mother, motive of wife is danger in Muslim societies. The woman figure is trying to be changed deliberately. I remember a research, it was, I think, by an American company years ago. They came to Turkey in 1920s. The research aim was that to understand the form of family in Turkey. They wanted to understand why family motives were good in past in Turkey. And they saw that the woman figure, the motif of mother, the motif of wife was wonderful. And they said, if we collapse this figure, if we collapse the figure of women in the society, we can collapse this society. So Muslims or Muslim communities suffering in many parts of the world need psychological care giving from their Muslim sisters and brothers and the world at large, but most urgently by establishing, I hope, societies of psychologists, sans frontiers sort of organizations to work with Red Cross, not Red Cross, sorry, Kızılay, like Kızılay in Red Crescent for alleviations of symptoms. Maybe when we need, maybe we will also cooperate with Red Cross too. But from an Islamic perspective, we need to deal with these problems. And techniques can be developed in the process because practice makes perfect, you know. Also, we need to check our intention, by the way. That's very important. We need to ask ourselves, is our niyyah, is our intention good, like in the beginning? I mean, we can speak about solutions, but we should be united as Muslims, as I said before. We should check our intentions, niyyahs. Is our niyyah salih, good at the beginning of any work? And does it continue to be good in the middle of our journey? And is it still good at the end of our amal, our deed, our work? And how do we act with our intention between our amal and amal? I mean, between our deed and work. And we should always keep in our minds, why are we here on earth? For example, why are we here in this program now? What is our duty here? What for? For fame? To be known? Why am I here? Why are we here? Let it be purely for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let us be united with tawakkul, tafakkur, and ta'akkul. Deep contemplation, deep tafakkur is very important. And we should protect our Islamic culture, of course. And the real culture is to have the consciousness of religion, language, and history. Wherever we are, in which country we are, we should protect Islamic culture in general. Individuals and societies can only survive with their religion, their language, and their history. And also, of course, from after all these problems, if we think about the solutions, we should say that keeping Quran company is a mysterious blessing for self-control, either by recitation, even if you don't know Arabic, or by indeed looking at Mus'haf for longer periods. And mass prayers, Salatul Jama'ah, are also a booster of self-control, maintaining intimate relations with family, and with ululul arham, along with charity to them. And the life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is just fantastically instructive. The world is feeling the need for spiritual psychology, of course. Let us communicate with different psychologists and psychiatrists, and even psychologists from different religions, different understandings. They want us to contribute to them as well. they want us to cooperate with them. Because some psychologists are aware of that human being needs spirituality. So let us join APA, let us join IPC and others. Let us speak their, also sometimes if it is needed, their language, because we shouldn't deny modern psychology totally. We should keep the important parts and the useful parts for us. And organizing efforts of Muslim psychologists can best be achieved by national, co-federal, and international societies, publishing, cyber counseling together. And many of them are presently out of the lizard's hole, like Professor Malik Bedri always mentions, like the hadith of Prophet Muhammad. If the other people from other religions, if they go to a lizard hole, will we get into that lizard hole as well? We should be out of that lizard hole. And indeed, some Western psychologists are now proposing spiritual psychology models consistent with Islamic psychology. So Muslim societies, they face problems, of course, but as Muslim psychologists or psychiatrists or specialists of psychology of religion, we have to develop our own curriculum, our own education system. And child rearing is the most important issue. Morality, akhlaq, child rearing, and their relationship with child rearing practices, and our relationship with our relatives, society, other people. It can best be seen in the light of the adat, ibadat, and muamalat as enjoined in Quran and Sunnah in the life of Prophet Muhammad. And because I think a well-adjusted person in Islamic psychology is the one who is as close as he can to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we should protect our culture and we should protect our akhlaq. If we protect them, we will solve the problems very easily.
Thank you, Dr. Saliha. It was indeed an enlightening discussion. And the way that you've shed light on transpersonal psychology and established the connection between Islamic psychology and the challenges that today the world faces, and more importantly the Muslim Ummah, and how Islamic psychology can help overcome these challenges. Thank you very much, and Assalamu alaikum.